We're going to discuss the topics that matter to you: race, single parenting, domestic violence, education, and now, the Hagir Show.
Hello and welcome to the Hagir Show. I am your host, Hagir. I have watched TV shows that address human sex trafficking. I listened to stories and news globally and here in the US, but I never would have thought that this is a big problem here in Pennsylvania. Human trafficking, unfortunately, is one of the fastest growing criminal industries in the world. Currently, it is second only to drug trafficking and produced 32 billion of annual revenue worldwide. A trafficker or a pimp is the person who forced an adult or a minor to engage in a commercial sex for her own profit. Today, we are going to explore these issues through different eyes: a victim and a survivor, a law enforcement personnel, and a victim advocate, and a previous pimp. Please help me welcome our guest. First, we will talk to Rhonda. Rhonda, hello.
Hi.
Can you introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Yes, thank you. My name is Rhonda Hendrickson. I am a Vice President of Programs at the YWCA Greater Harrisburg, and I am the founder of the Path 15 project, which stands for the Pennsylvania Alliance Against Trafficking in Humans Route 15 project. And in short, we cover 12 counties up and down Route 15 and provide training, education, but more importantly, we provide interventions and direct services for victims of human trafficking.
Perfect. Thank you for everything you're doing. And can we just start by explaining what is human trafficking? Tell everyone out there human trafficking in general. When we hear that, I think of human sex trafficking. And I'm sure a lot of people do the same.
Right. And you know, human trafficking is really modern day slavery. And you said it earlier. It is the commercial exploitation of one human being by another, and it's for the purposes of commercial sex or for labor services.
Okay. And why is this like a huge issue now? Is it because we are touching or talking about it here in Pennsylvania, or it's always been an issue? I know Harrisburg is one of the area that people move across from different cities, states. So, I mean, a lot of people out there don't know why are we talking now about this subject.
Well, you're right. I mean, Harrisburg is a huge transportation hub. Think of all the intersections in Harrisburg, you know, Route 81, Route 15, the Turnpike. We're really that cross sector to reach New York, to reach Maryland and Washington. So we're in a perfect place where victims can be transported, but also where victims are recruited. And, you know, this has been around for forever, but it hasn't always been called human trafficking. You know, Act 105, which was passed in September of 2014, has really given Pennsylvania the strength behind our laws and really identified what human trafficking looks like and given prosecutors and police officers the tools they need to address this. Before, we might have looked at trafficking as prostitution, or it might have even included kidnapping and certain RICO charges. But today, we're very clear human trafficking is well defined in our Pennsylvania law as well as our federal statutes.
What I read somewhere in 2016, it's like the United States. When I had previously spoke about this issue, people think this is a foreign issue happening in all other countries except the United States. And when I start reading, I was very surprised and shocked. In 2016, it's 32.5% increased in just the United States. And do we have any current statistic, or you don't know?
So it's really difficult to give you local statistics. You know, we are really just on the forefront of attacking this problem, so those kind of statistics don't necessarily exist yet. However, if we look at what the YWCA has been doing with our Path 15 project, since 2014, we've worked with about 135 victims. 85 to 89% of those victims are United States citizens. And, is this a problem?
Ages?
Ages run anywhere from, our youngest victim was about 15 years old, and our oldest victim is in their 60s. So it's hard, there's no stereotype here whatsoever. It's just like domestic violence, sexual
Just like
assault.
domestic violence doesn't discriminate.
It does not discriminate, and really anybody can fall prey to this, but especially people who are already vulnerable, people who might have substance abuse problems or have a lot of trauma, childhood sexual assault, domestic violence in their homes. So we see long histories of trauma in the victims.
Okay. And one of the areas that I read also from the Department of I forgot the link, but I'll put it down. There's 1 in 6 endangered runaway. Is it just because of this age? You said between 15 to 60, and I read somewhere 12 to 18 is the more vulnerable. Is it because of the age? Is it because of problem in their families, or is it just because of they're more prone to accept?
All of those things.
All of the above.
All of those things. Just based on their age, they're very vulnerable. And then take a child who is a runaway, a throwaway, or a walk-away, which means they walked away from home and nobody's going to miss them. Parents don't care, go ahead and leave. Or they might have walked away or ran away from the foster care system. Traffickers exploit the vulnerabilities of children. They befriend them. They romanticize them. I'll take care of you. Come with me. I'll be your white knight in shining armor, and I'll save you. But what they do is then manipulate and coerce this person into things like forced prostitution.
Okay. 1 in 6 is a really scary number. Anthony, can you introduce yourself and tell us about your experience with this?
Sure. My name's Anthony Fiore. I'm a police officer with the Harrisburg Bureau of Police. I'm currently assigned to our Street Crimes Unit, which is operated under the Office of the Chief. I've been a police officer here in the city for almost 9 years now. My experience with human trafficking is kind of in its infant stages. We just recently kind of broke ground on an investigation that myself and members of the Dauphin County District Attorney's Office have been running since almost January of this year. So, like I said, my experience is limited, but the amount of things and amount of different aspects that I've learned about human trafficking over the last 7 months is quite overwhelming.
Okay. And you said you guys just you were working on a case for all this time. This is 8 months. This is the normal process. Why is it that long?
I think this case that we're working now is it's a little bit different than your prototypical, like what you would think of with human trafficking. Like you had mentioned earlier, just describe human trafficking. Prior to my experience with human trafficking right now, I was the kind of guy that would think, somebody bringing people over the border and forcing them to work in factories, low wages, that kind of stuff. But what I've experienced here in the city over the last 7 months is completely opposite of that. The victims are residents of the area. The victims have their own problems and their own vulnerabilities. I haven't found a single victim in the case that we're working now where it's not someone who's down on their luck. They might have a drug addiction or financial instabilities, housing instabilities. Each victim is
unique.
Is unique, but at the same time, their problems are exploited by the people who are trafficking them.
And are you, during your small time, did you notice that there is a more focused area that you can find the human sex trafficking in general, whether it's labor or whether it's human sex trafficking?
Right. So the three general areas that we've focused on here just recently was labor servitude, a person's ability to control their access to a controlled substance, and then physically controlling a person's real property. For example, labor servitude. We found that the traffickers that we're investigating, they would force their victims or coerce their victims to commit retail thefts. And when they would commit those retail thefts, they would bring back product. And a lot of times it was high-value electronics, PlayStation 4s, Xbox Ones, flat-screen TVs, and they would bring those items back and they would compensate them with just a small amount of heroin or crack cocaine. There were several situations where there was propositions for sex. The sex would also be compensated with heroin or crack cocaine, and then the controlling of someone's personal property. We found that these traffickers they would maintain and take identification cards, access cards, social security cards. They would take registrations to vehicles that their victims drove or owned, and then they would threaten them. They'd say, "Hey, we know where you live. We know where your parents live. Your parents are registered to your car. If you don't do what we're going to say, we're going to go here. And we'll retaliate against them."
On that note, I will introduce Mr. Kevin, who did 6 years in prison for pimping, and he is going to talk about his story. Is it okay to say that you were in what you call it, the pimping game? And can you explain to us?
Let us, most certainly do this. Let us understand, just like in the particular business of trafficking, there's different levels of it. I was never a pimp.
Okay.
So we have to understand that there's differences of how we behave in that.
Okay.
For instance, a pimp is homosexual with no disrespect to that particular genre. He do whatever. It's not what I was. I was more of a psychiatrist, a manipulator, a facilitator. I didn't have to beat up people. I was brain. So no, I was what we call a gentleman of leisure or a Mac kid. We use our brains. No need to beat on anybody. No. That's a whole different variety of gentleman that I was. So no, pimp, I was not.
Okay.
However, I was an abuser or a manipulator of women in the facilitation of prostitution and the likeness of women stealing, of women going in banks, of women, all types of ish. So that part, yes, but as far as pimp, no.
Okay.
No,
To
absolutely.
me, I consider that fall into this, but I will agree to what you want to be called. You did 6 years for your crime. And can you explain to us what exactly led you to stop, or why? Like, is it just because you got caught, you got all to do the job, or what happened?
Well, it's very, very simple. In spite of what I was doing, I never, how can I say? I didn't wake up one day and say, you know what? I'll make a woman a prostitute. It didn't happen that way.
Okay. How did it start?
It started because I couldn't go to college to fulfill my basketball scholarship. That's how it started, economics, mental depression, so forth and so forth. And you didn't have, when I was growing up, the facilities available that you do now, like the program she's speaking of, the different programs that the police have for you. None of that was there, okay? So out of sheer, how can we say, actually, it was older men that said, hey man, this, and that. And after maybe a year and a half of depression, I was walking one night on 3rd Street. I was maybe 16. It started earlier, but I let it go and tried to go to school, which I wasn't successful at because home wasn't successful. So for me, the initiation of all of this was threefold. Let's start where it began. Got molested as a child. When I was a child, if you said that to someone, no one believed you. That's where it started. Number one. Number two, no mom, no dad. So at 14 years old, and this is one of my best friends that came while they were in school. I was sleeping in cars, raising my age up because I was a little taller than most kids to work at UPS to take care of my younger siblings. So this was not something that I willingly in my heart ever ingested. It was something that I'd done out of ignorance. And that's how it ended, because it wasn't who I was. And there's a thing called God. There's also, I had children real young. And at a certain point, you know, and after the penitentiary, it was like, these dudes, I leave home, there's some little people. I come home, these are children now. Where was Dad? That vicious cycle, where was my father? See, back to those economics again. And luckily for me, I bumped into a decent older man that said, you know what, Kevin? I'm going to show you something. What he showed me was how to use my hands, how to use tools. And that was basically how it happened. I just knew it. It was never in my heart. It was just never there. I did it because the people around me did it. Influenced by older people on kids. What 13, 14-year-old child has the equipment to deal with a 30, 35-year-old man? It doesn't, and especially if these men and women don't have their best interests. And this is where it starts. It starts in the house. And here's what I can say. Right here in Harrisburg, and I'm going to be bold, 4 out of 10 male children are molested. You just don't know it. I'm going to say that again. 4 out of 10. Here's the greater damage of this. Now, I was not molested by a man physically, but a man's physically present. And the only one of the reasons why I was allowed to come out of this. Children, again, don't have the tools and adult has to even speak about trauma. You can't facilitate it. So for all of those years, from 14 till 30, all of that. So yeah, it was easy to act out what was acted on me in a way. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It does. No young woman wakes up and says, you know what, I'm going to be a prostitute or a whore, or I'm going to steal today. No young man. There's always the big 3. Most of the time, and I'm telling you, this is 9 out of 10 that live this life, have been molested. And I'm going to be so bold to say it. For me, I told my parents, no one wanted to hear that. Now, how do you tell your parents that you've been molested and no one wants to hear it? So what do? You go in the shell, and that shell becomes what was alive in me as a little boy is dead now. So at 14, I'm doing things men. Heck, I couldn't even deal with girls my age because of what I've already been soiled and stained. So it's a vicious cycle that starts in a house. A relative's house, sometimes even the church. But 9 out of 10 people that live this life have been molested. So the choices are, you become, I'll use your word, a pimp. You become, if a female, a prostitute. Or, number 3, an enactor of the crime that was committed against you. You become a molester. And thankfully for me, and I'm not justifying my crimes, I paid, rightfully so. But do you understand what I'm trying to say? The act of it itself is worse than
So there is no 4 choices. Like there is no one where you, as even a child going through this, you had the choice. You did not feel you had the choice of saying, I don't like what is done to me, I'm going to change it. I'm going to try to.
Again, take yourself. I don't know how you want. Let's take you back to 14, how many days that were, and all of us. Were you able to facilitate what you wanted to say and or what you felt most importantly at that age as you are now? The answer to that is no. No child is, and the thing of I'm saying again, economics. A hungry child. I was him. So these older guys saying, come on, man, let us show you this. And inevitably at 15 years old, I'm living in a house with a 33-year-old woman. Who does that? I'm driving a new car to high school. No one gives a damn. Who does that? The society does that to children. See, it's not mommy and daddy. We need him for damn sure. We need you, we need her. There's a great healing that needs to happen in our children, and no one's listening. No one's listening. You'd be surprised at the things that happen around. Like, for instance, one of the greatest crimes is committed against older people, especially older women. Taking advantage of their cars are taken from them. Like he said, the access cards. And so what they do, they take pictures or films of them and say, hey, tell anybody. It's horrible out here. But again, without there being a communication between law enforcement, the community, and these people that are affected. See, because the people who have been affected by this, you can't go to school to know what I know about this. He can't. You have to be a volunteer or a participant in that hell. It's hell. And it affects all of us that have been through it. And again, I'm not one to glamorize it. I've never glamorized what I've done. And you'd be surprised how many young men come to me that know that part of my life. Say, yo, G, yeah, no, homie, that's poison. It's buried. Now, you want to learn how to use this level in this song? Now, I'll teach you that. You want to learn how to facilitate the English language? I'll teach you that. You want to learn how to play an instrument? I'll teach you that. But not that. So, do you understand what I'm trying to say? That sense of neighborhood that we once had.
And just let me take you back to what he said about driving. He was molested, and part of what we're dealing with, if you see a child, I think I'm going to just get that out of this. If we see a child in his age driving a brand new car or some major change, that should be a sign, one of the signs that, right? I might have some. What do you want to talk to Kevin? I'm sure you have something you want to talk to him about, but would that be a sign for the community to be involved? He's saying if there is involvement, and there is a lot of what he's saying is part of the issue, like we discussed earlier, the community involvement. How safely can we get involved? How can we recognize someone in distress, or someone before they turn and become something that they will hate for or resent for the rest of their life?
Right. So I think what Kevin has described about his childhood really mirrors what we see traffickers doing to recruit their victims. That manipulation, that pretending I'm your friend and I'm going to save you, or I'm going to help you, or I'm going to be your boyfriend or your new big sister. And we see that manipulation. And when you see that child, if you, a 14-year-old girl, let's say, all of a sudden has an older boyfriend, or it has new designer clothes and a Gucci purse, somebody in that child's life, whether it's a parent, a teacher, some caring adult, needs to start asking questions. What has happened to you? Not what's wrong with you. What's happened to you is a whole different question. And see if you can open that conversation. And I know that sounds very simple. I'm making it be very simple. But you have got to establish some level of trust to get this child,
to open up.
Right, who may be being victimized by adults. They're not going to say, oh, yeah, let me talk to you. So
Notice I keep saying, and I'm repetitive, and it'll become redundant. I keep saying that this is a continuum of a threefold relationship. First things first, no one's going to open up to you. You don't know them. You don't have the experience of what they are experiencing. See, that's the key. You have to have someone in the middle. It's the same thing with no matter how good a police... Let me just finish right there. Let me read. No matter how good a police officer he is, without some assistance from the particular environment, he's never going to crack the case.
What do you mean by environment? Explain to us.
I'm speaking in code.
Okay.
So he's understanding what I'm saying.
I want you to speak it so the normal person like
they
me
do.
And the
they
audience
do.
to understand
He does.
it.
I'm speaking in code without incriminating myself or himself. He's
Okay.
understanding perfectly what I'm saying. Because of the way the neighborhood is now. If you talk to him, what are you called?
Snitch.
Now, what does that do? This has put a damper that no matter, even if I've been hurt by this man or this woman, I'm not going to him because I'll be labeled a snitch. So the help that wasn't available to me has now been stereotyped and has been dysfunction. Do you understand? So you have to have someone who can cross those lines, his line and theirs, like a liaison. See, a community building, a community liaison where Officer Anthony, and because there's kids, now you'd be surprised. There's lots of young kids that want to talk, but they can't because there is no place for them. They can't go to his office because, trust me, let me back up and silence some of those things. Anyway, there's a lot more going on than you would even begin to imagine. Mm-hmm. And just like he has an investigative team, so do they. Oh, yes, they do. And just like he's about the business of trying to put them where they belong, they're about the business of trying to prolong him doing it. So my point again is, you have to come, we, I'm not going to say you, mm-hmm. we. I, as a parent, as a man, as a person who, for me, this is a lifelong debt that I can never pay, no matter how many kids I help, no matter, and I've developed a program to help, written up, mm-hmm. compiled, mm-hmm. and I know it works because I've worked it on the best patient in the world. If it worked on me, it worked. We have to get to the business of uncovering this little mass. See, it's just a little thin layer that lies between him being able to do his job and the streets being safe for anybody to walk on, or the continuum of how it is. You have to get a community building where he can come and she can come, and they can come and we can come and talk about our problem, because we have a problem. The biggest problem is what? I can't talk to him because if anybody sees me talk to him, I'm doomed in the neighborhood.
He makes a really good point, and some of the stuff that he was saying, that Kevin here was saying earlier, it starts with healing. Mm-hmm. First off, there has to be a genuine relationship between the police and the community, and that's not something that's obviously going to happen overnight. But it is something that I know that we're trying to do here, and I know the chief is trying to do here. But like we were talking before we went on air here, these cases are so hard to identify and they're so hard to find. Like you could get 100 calls for service for a burglary. It comes across 911 all the time. Mm-hmm. 100 calls for service for a robbery. It comes across 911 all the time. You never get that call that says, hey, up on 17th Street there's human trafficking going on. That just doesn't happen. You have to have a community or people within the community who are so comfortable talking with the police to give you that information. And that's very difficult to do because, like Kevin said, the overwhelming mentality on the street today is that if you speak with the police in any manner, everybody else, they might not even see what you're saying. You might be telling the police officer what you had for lunch. The people who see you speaking with the police, they don't know that. Mm-hmm. Okay? So you're safe when you're standing there with me, but as soon as I leave around the corner and 10 people come out of the house and question why you were talking to me, everything falls apart again. So the second thing that we're talking about before we went on air, on how to make these victims more comfortable when you're talking with them. The biggest thing is having someone like Kevin who can relate to them. I could ask them 1,000 questions, and I could ask 1,000 of the perfect and most appropriate questions, and unless they're comfortable telling me the answer, I'm never going to get the answers that I know they want to tell me. Mm-hmm. So that's Kevin's spot on with that. There has to be people within the community who are working, like with Ron, Kevin, the police department, community groups. There has to be that connection, but there has to be more of it.
And that's true, but let me just bring this back a little bit. I agree with what you said.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with what you said. But the bottom line accountability here isn't on people in the community telling and snitching. The bottom line is the traffickers are the exploiters. They are the ones responsible for this crime, period. Plain and simple, and they need to be accountable. Do the bystanders in that community need to be aware? Absolutely, and I agree. We need help identifying these cases because victims do not walk in our door and say, I'm a human trafficking victim. Mm-hmm. We see that with our domestic violence program. They do walk in and say, help me, You know, my spouse, my significant other is hurting me. We don't see that with human trafficking. What we see are police making interventions, the FBI making interventions, and bringing those victims to us. And, you know, I'm really proud. The YWCA really has made a difference in helping victims get the comfort level that you need, but getting them services and starting that healing process that was probably missing for Kevin. You know, we're a neutral party. We're not advocating for prosecution. We're not advocating for them to do anything except make the choice that's going to be best for them. And that's what makes all the difference in the world, is having that neutral party who can say, I want to hear what you need right now. What do you need to be safe, and what can we help you do?
But it's all matter of them trusting you. That's what he was saying. How can we get that, like, I mean, I know with his experience, with Kevin's experience, and with
It can be taught.
knowledge,
It's technique.
what can be taught?
The technique. See, I'm going to give you a perfect example, and it's wonderful that he's sitting here. Now, I don't know this man personally, that's obvious. It's not my business to. His line of duty depicts that's how it goes, whatever. Here's what I know. Until he was taught and trained, he might have thought about being a police officer. But once he got the training, he became one. See, it's training. It's a revisioning or a revising of thought. It's a re-editing of how we speak. It's a different body language, because what I want to make you totally aware of, people who have been damaged like me, we feel things that you would never dream of feeling. See, there's another key. We can smell you. We can smell your disdain, your my friend sitting in there, if he's still here, he'll tell you. All of that is awakened once you've been put through that torture test. So what I'm saying is, it's training. It's conversation. It's a group of guys and girls like people like me with a group of guys and girls like y'all to sit exchange back and forth in your hammer. And it's just training. He can be trained to recognize this, just like I didn't wake up and say, you know, I want to be able to tell immediately who's a thief, who's a hooker, who's a pimp, who's this and that. I can do it because I've roamed that corridor. I was trained to recognize it. So can she be trained, or how can I say, yeah, I'm saying, yeah, it is a training. Yeah.
You're bringing a good topic here when we were talking about trafficker and what they're looking for. He said he's training. That's why exactly what we're going to have you.
For example, you could take me. Well, you wouldn't have to take me. Okay? I can take myself, because there's certain things about this particular disease that will never change. And what is that? Opportunity. This is all based upon opportunity, opportunism. So my knowing that, I could write on a paper right now, and I haven't been in the streets in, I'll be 60 years old, so thank God. And many of them, I haven't been in the streets in 35 years or so. But I could write down right now on a paper, right now, and tell him where to go, and he can make arrests tonight, because it does not change. It's only masked. That's all. It'll never change, because it's an ignorance and an evil disease. So yeah, people need to have, the community needs to be trained in thinking, but so does our law enforcement and the people in position that want to help. To have her job, you have to want to help. She needs to be trained, because she can't help with her heart's desire until she learns the language of these people. And it's not the one that we're using.
And we are back talking about the victims who are hiding in plain sight, as we say, or as the YW always say in their website. We stopped at Kevin trying to talk to us about science.
All right, I'm going to tag right in off of what you're talking about. There are signs. Well, one of the first signs you can tell when it comes to a male, he'll be overly assertive out of his mouth, nasty, irritated, angry, egregious, aggressive, and what's that based on? You'd be surprised how many children are hungry. Let me repeat that. 2017. It would amaze you how many kids in this little town are hungry. One of the uglier things, and I'm going to speak about that because I'm not afraid, one of the uglier scars of this disease out here are the human trafficking and abuse system of these monsters, this disease, is, as I speak about a child being hungry, well, if the mother's addicted to drug or has an abusive associate, there goes the nourishment for the child. Mm-hmm. One of the greater things that the new modern day drug dealer does is he preys on people's access cards, things like that. So the little boy that you'll see later on in the day that's running around, you see him cussing, if you give him a candy bar, you'll be surprised what happened. And I mean, I'm saying that humorously, but it's sad and it's true. Mm-hmm. Females, most of the time she's real withdrawn, or she's like that little boy acting way outside of the bounds of a little girl. And what are these? Again, as I said earlier, as I was speaking, as a child, we're not able to facilitate these dark, deep feelings. Like, if you and your husband get divorced and "Oh baby, I miss you," you can cry it out, you can listen to some Luther or some whoever, have you a sip of your beverage of choice, you'll be fine. But as a child, you can't. You don't know how. You don't know, more importantly, who can I go to? And again, our line of defense once was him. That's been severed. So who do I go to? I don't know about her. See, they're back to that building I'm talking about, where they have access to her. And access to you, you'd be surprised how much seeing a professional woman like you would mean simply to children and her, who are not improperly clothed. I mean, this is all that they see. Do you understand what I'm saying? And for the little girls, let me especially speak about them because they're at the greater risk. This little girl, most of the time, she's withdrawn. Most of them, they don't want to speak. And again, this premise is based upon economics and sustenance. That little girl, most of the time, is hungry too. That little girl, most of the time, as we notice, the mothers have gotten younger. The parenting skills aren't where they need to be. There's again another problem. And even though I was older, my parents' parenting skills evidently, they left a little bit to desire back to the girl. Not only is she withdrawn or over assertive with her mouth, she has another issue. She's been soiled. See, the greatest part about being the sex crimes against children, it's unlike any other. It's threefold. It's mental, it's physical, and it's spiritual. To this day, I'm incapable, basically, of loving someone. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Incapable.
Absolutely.
And why is that? Why you think is that? Because of your everything happened to you?
I know. Of course that's why. And then you add that monster, that damaged little dude, no help. Mm-hmm. Being an articulate dude, very unassuming, as I said to you before, because I don't look the part. Of course I was. Now, add that on top of that. It wasn't a matter of me thinking. It's not a matter of me thinking. I know why. It's trust. Once that's broken, do you understand? And even though I've got therapy and I've got help and all that, to this day, where does that go? It goes nowhere. And the other part of it, fortunately for me, is that I've been uninclined to harm anyone or meaning to take out what I've been through on anyone else. I've been more assertive as far as wanting to help people because I can identify them. And it's easy for me to talk to someone who's been damaged because I am. I understand. And when it's a thing that we do amongst ourselves, we can feel whether you're being honest with us or not. And once that's been broken, then you talk to everybody because they have someone that they're in common. Like, I'm a musician. He wouldn't feel good at a hip-hop concert. That's not his element. Nowhere would I feel good at a policeman's ball. It's the same thing with our children that have been damaged. You see what I'm trying to say? It's a threefold thing with being there with that. psychologically destroys, it physically destroys, and it spiritually impairs. Part of it is again, you're gonna have to work it from all of those levels in order to incorporate a program that can actually combat it in a way that you're making some headway, because going blow for blow, that ain't winning the fight. Training is needed on all levels. The community needs to be retrained how to communicate and have trust, okay? So like I was saying to a group of people the other day, I understand what you're saying would happen in St. Louis. Fortunately, that did not happen here. Now, with that in mind, that made me think it could. Yeah, and the only way it could, or something like that could happen is if we allow it to. See, we are lucky enough to have a small enough place that if we did and put the actual work, this is not rocket science. It just takes 3 different levels: law enforcement, the people in the community, and people in her situation, and of course yours. So there's a way for folks to hear. Okay. The thing of it is that this unrelentless ignorance to not want to talk to each other. See, this is the problem. We didn't get to this problem yesterday. This is 30 years of us not talking. All of a sudden one day, everybody just went their own separate way. And this right here is the result of that. I no longer wanted to hear what he had to say, and we're just using this as an example, and we're all aware of it. The Republican doesn't want to hear it, the Democrat. The black doesn't want to hear it, the white. The white doesn't want to hear the black. This is all this crap. And all of our babies are being affected by it. So back to the John. The enabler is the money. I'm going to keep saying the same thing. The enabler is the money. And yeah, there's some things that you know that I don't know, and like we can go around that. But if we put those 4 things together, we know something. If we put what he knows, she knows, you know, and I know together, we're starting to put something together. Well, okay, we can fight this problem, because this is the prostitution and human trafficking goes more on in your neighborhood, darling, than it does mine. I just like to let you know that. Because, and I don't mean that facetiously or ugly. Money is the enabler. See, no one's going to steal from Walmart if you don't buy it. No one is going to bring that woman from the desert in Arizona that's Mexican, and I said that for a reason. I'm being real careful with that, because they kill. You'd be surprised. Who's going to hear that person? Especially since we're not talking. If I'm not talking to him and he's not talking to you and you're not putting the word out, these people are going to continuously be taken advantage of. And all of us will have the same passion and compassion. And all of us will still say, you know, there's still something we can do. What we can do is be a team. Make a circle around your town. It's always obvious. He knows who a new drug dealer is as soon as he comes to the neighborhood. He knows. Just like I know, as soon as I see a girl walk down the street a certain way, I can tell you what she's about to do or going to do. You can take me to school and I can do it. It's because of how prevalent it is now. See, we see it all the time, okay? And the only way you can stop it is literally do something about it. There's people all over this town that have beautiful daughters. Who wants their daughter to go through that? Who wants their son to be a pimp or a prisoner or a convict? Who? Who wants their child to overdose off of barbiturates or heroin or hell? You can buy fentanyl in Harrisburg off the street. Did you know that? Let me repeat that.
I won't be surprised, but
you can buy fentanyl. For real? So again, why is fentanyl in Harrisburg? Because there's a market for it. Why are women being ran through our corridors? Because there's a market for it. See, it's the market. You can't treat the criminal for carrying out his act and not punish the enabler. You gotta do both. If she goes to jail, so should he. It should be no question about it. Jail, because you committed a crime.
This is a discussion we had earlier. What makes us who are trying to help feel hopeless and helpless and sometimes useless, because I understand what he's saying and I understand what I have in mind, and I can see this is a victim and this is the abuser or the trafficker, or in any case we're talking about. But the law is the law. If we cannot prove that this person did not catch him in the act, and I wish if we had a different system, but this is what we have. I understand what you're saying, Kevin, but at the end, what they see is this victim here, dressed or getting ready or whatever. But we don't see the guy who's standing, or we can see him, like Tim said before, they know this is a trafficker, this is a pimp, but they can't do anything unless this victim speak or say something. Welcome back, and we will talk to Anthony and Rhonda before we close tonight this show. What can we do to assure everyone out there with their involvement and how they can safely help? If we see something, our human nature, if, generally speaking, you want to help, but sometimes you risk yourself. How can we safely help? How can we, what can we do?
You want to start?
Well, one thing you can do is, if you have a suspicion, if there is an immediate danger, you can call the National Human Trafficking Resource Center's hotline. Mm-hmm. And just Google that, National Human Trafficking Resource Center. You'll get their hotline number. You can make an anonymous tip. Those tips are, ferreted out to the local law enforcement or the local task force or the FBI to investigate them. So you can remain anonymous. And of course, if you need services, if you've been a victim, if you think somebody you know has, you can call the YWCA. We have a myriad of services available, and it's all free and it's all confidential.
And we will put a link to all of that, the 1-800 number, the hotline. There is also an email that you can use anonymously, and we will put the link to the YWCA. But also, there is all the services that you mentioned at the beginning that you can help with placing the victims and providing shelter and food, and basically rehabilitating, like you're going to show them how to function in the society. Do we have all that?
Right. We will provide that victim a case manager who will work with them and stay with them as long as necessary. We're going to identify the crisis, we're going to respond to the crisis, but we're going to follow that victim. Whether or not she chooses to go through the criminal justice system does not matter. We will work with her, we will figure out what she would like to do. We can offer emergency shelter, we can offer permanent housing, along with financial assistance for a period of time to help them get stabilized in the housing. All our life skills come with that. So it really is a lot of wraparound services that insulate the victim.
I know for the domestic violence, they can file a PFA, can the human trafficking, in all kind of human trafficking. Can they file a PFA?
Potentially, if the trafficker has an intimate relationship with them, and often they do, so they would qualify for a PFA. They might also qualify for a sexual violence protection order.
Does it have to be intimate, or can they just specifically state that they were doing this to them? Would they
there has to be certain relationships under the Protection from Abuse Act.
Okay.
So if it's just, your employer, you're a stranger, that wouldn't necessarily qualify for a PFA. Okay. If it's a stranger, though, it could qualify for a sexual violence protection order. Those are different. Those are outside of those intimate relationships. So if the trafficker has actually raped the victim, which often happens and usually does, they would qualify for that SVPO.
Okay. All right. Anthony?
From a law enforcement standpoint, I think one of the biggest hurdles that we have is obviously the ability to communicate with the victims on their level. But oftentimes we hear that a lot of the reasons that the victims are afraid to communicate is fear of retaliation. And I'm sure it exists. I'm not here to say that it does not exist. But I can tell you that in my 8.5 years of law enforcement experience, the level at which it exists is not what you would think. So, like, for instance, these traffickers that we dealt with during this last investigation, they would threaten to burn down houses of family members. You know, go to their families or their parents' place of work or business and assault them or kill them even. I can tell you in my experience that I've never seen anything like that happen. I'm not saying that it can't or that it's not possible, but I am saying that it's not common. We need to figure out a way to get our victims to believe and trust the prosecution system and to trust the process, and that the process cannot overcome without their cooperation. So as soon as we bridge that gap and we cross that bridge, we can effectively prosecute a lot more of these traffickers.
Mm-hmm. And if there is any way of protecting them when they come?
Obviously, the first line of defense is going to be with the police department. You need to call 911. You need to reach out to your local law enforcement agencies, because the police, at the end of the day, they are the first line of defense. And the more information the police knows, the more that they can help you and the more that they can protect you. Just like Rhonda mentioned, Dauphin County also has an anonymous tip source, Dauphin County Crime Watch.
Okay.
It's funded and it's established by the Dauphin County District Attorney's Office, and you can do the exact same thing. You can submit anonymous tips on any type of crime, whether it be a theft or human trafficking or homicide. It does not matter. But it's also a very integral tool that we've been using, and it has in this situation, the trafficking case that I've investigated, it has come to use because people have reached out to us on it.
Kevin?
Well, one of the major things is that, and I say this especially to young women, if someone is abusing you, mistreating you, that says that they're your boyfriend, your lover, or friend, get away from that person. That person does not mean you any good whatsoever. The second thing is, don't be afraid to tell someone, whether it's law enforcement, at the church, or a good friend, an elder, that someone is harming you. No one can know or help you if you're not sharing with them that you're hurt. The other part of it is, black community, wake up, we got some black issues that only we can undo.
Thank you very much. And this will conclude our show. I would like to thank Kevin, Rhonda, and Anthony for coming here and speaking to us and to the audience about this major crime. And like we said, it's hidden in plain sight. It's around us, and it's actually bigger than we can imagine. We cannot give you everything in one sitting, but it's on you to go Google it, look around you, search it, and just open your eyes and listen to what we said, eyes and ears. With this note, we want to thank everyone again, and we want you to be involved. There is only you and the community who can stop this crime, and it will not continue if we stop it. Like we said, we stop the source and we stop the trafficker and help the victims. And you can identify the victims around you. If you see someone hungry, someone is behavior change, or anything that we mentioned in tonight's show, please be mindful and do good to your community. Good night.